Good morning, Bill.
This morning, I'm a big cash this morning. I have on no tie, but I do have a pocket square, and it's a very unique pocket square in that it looks one way on one side and another way on the other side. In other words, you can pay for one and use it multiple times.
Isn't that great?
Now that's the way, we're going to be talking about AVMs, and that's the way a lot of bankers...
I don't know if you can tie that into a bow tie.
No, I don't think it goes into a bow tie, but it would be cool as a bow tie when it's like bright. Now, a lot of bankers want to use AVMs like that. They want to buy it once and use it many times. Appraisals as well.
Yeah.
But there's a few challenges with that. Today we're talking about our AVM strategy, and we're going to relate it to this pocket square. Because what they want to do is buy that AVM and stick it in the file and sort of like stick it in my pocket here, and that'd be it.
Yeah, that's sort of like using that for your tie.
Exactly, exactly. And so let's talk a little bit about automated valuation models. There was a time when the whole industry thought appraisals were going away.
Yeah. And you see where that took us.
Oh, we have a cynic this morning. A cynic. You must be a professor.
Well, you know, I mean, the thing about AVMs is that if you're wanting to know a general indication of what the value is
it better than a dartboard?
Maybe.
Marginally?
Marginally, you know, I mean, that's the thing about statistics. People always focus on the central aspect of the distribution.
And not the dispersion.
No, not the dispersion. You know, it's funny because with AVMs, we look at, we test a lot of AVMs, and you look at the distribution of the errors, and they're all fairly wide, you know, and if you have a really good confidence score, it's a little bit narrower, okay? But it still has these tails out there, so anytime you get a value, you don't know where in that distribution that value came from. It could be really good, or it could be terrible. And for that matter, if you get a really low confidence score, same thing. You don't know where it came from. It could be really good, or it could be terrible.
So let's step back and let's talk about the key issues with AVMs from a modeling standpoint, and then let's look at it from a regulatory standpoint. So from a modeling standpoint, the first thing you have to have, it would help to have good data.
Yeah. You know, and where is the data coming from? Currently, AVM modelers use public record data for sales transactions. Sometimes they have access to appraisal data.
Maybe appraisal data, maybe MLS.
They almost all use MLS data. A lot of them not only use MLS data for the sales, but they also use it for the listings.
Right.
Some of the models are based upon, in large part, on listing data. Of course, listings aren't the sales price, but it's an indication of what people are asking.
They can take a discount of listing and sales price. And
so, yeah, they use all of that data and they try and create a model, but, you know, there's some challenges. It would be a lot easier if houses were similar to
stocks.
Stocks. Well, if they were a stock, but I was thinking even more specifically about a specific commodity that had very clear...
Corn.
Corn.
You like corn? I like corn.
You like corn?
I like corn.
Well, you know, there's a lot of carbs in corn.
I know, but that's how you have to work out. It tastes good. You know how you spell taste, don't you? F-A-T.
I thought it was butter.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
All right, so what we have is we have these models that are trying to estimate some outcome, and the outcome typically is they're trying to predict value as a dependent variable. And they're using these series of independent variables that, depending on the model, they use, I mean, most of them use some form of regression to try to optimize the relationship between those variables.
Right, and you know, and they continually improve their models. I mean, there's nothing against a lot of the modelers that are out there. They're trying to come up with the very best model that's possible. But let's think about it for a minute. Let's think of it in economics terms. All right? Okay. So you've got a supply curve and a demand curve, right? And the way we always think about that is where the price, the equilibrium price, is where those two lines cross. Okay. Well, there are several complicating factors when you're talking about an AVM. First of all, there is no supply and demand curve for that one house.
Right.
Okay, I mean, frankly, there's only one of those. Okay, so there isn't a great big demand curve and a great big supply. So you think, okay, let's abstract from that and let's make it general, housing in general. Well, housing in general is not general. You know, location, 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 you know, and so you've got this mixture of houses, each with different characteristics and all of that. So you try and compensate for that by making a more complex model. But what model do you use?
Well, you try to get similar houses out of the same neighborhood. Sometimes there's not enough data.
Right, but you don't really ever know what the true model is. I mean, is the extra bedroom related to the previous bedrooms by a quadratic function or a cubic function, or how are those things come into the model? And so you really don't know any of this stuff.
So you guesstimate.
You guess. You come up with something that approximates it, and as a result, it does fairly good in general, but not necessarily good at all specifically.
Well, and so across a large number, then it probably does okay.
Yeah, and if you're concerned about an average level of risk or an average valuation, then you're in good shape. It's a good way to go. Problem is, people seem to want to be concerned about the specific valuation.
So let's talk about that. Let's move into regulation in the remaining time that we have and talk about mortgage origination. It's a no-no. We looked at that, and I thought the industry was heading down that road, but as we went through the Great Recession in 2008 and beyond, that ended.
Well, you know, the 2010 guidelines that came out with Appendix B talk a lot about, how do you use automated valuations? And that tells you the guidelines that you need to have in place and the testing you need to have in place and the specific procedures you need to have in place to use them. But then the funding agencies say, nope.
and so if you're going to sell that loan, you're going to have an appraisal. And if it's a federally related transaction where the loan amount is $250 or more, you're going to have an appraisal, period. No broker price opinion.
Right. Now, equity markets, they still use AVMs.
Absolutely.
In secondary market, they use AVMs.
But by the same token, you've got to have your model validated. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. Most institutions just say, look, we'll do something else besides an AVM, at least for lending purposes.
The regulations now also start to recognize the fact that you can run an AVM and get a value, but you really don't even know the property is there. And you don't know the condition of the property or anything.
So you have to augment that with some kind of property inspection.
Exactly. You've got to have someone put eyes on that property, which is a good thing.
So there are some valid uses of AVMs in financial institutions. Let's talk about that.
Well, think about it in terms of monitoring your portfolio, for example.
That's one use.
Okay, you don't really need, it's not that critical to know the specific value of an individual property, but if you have a big portfolio where you're doing an AVM on the whole portfolio, in all likelihood, the total value is actually probably pretty good, because the errors are going to sort of counteract each other, and you're going to have a pretty good valuation.
A number of our clients that have an RMBS portfolio, what they want to do is they want to disaggregate the portfolio into whole loans and figure out how much equity is in those whole loans and track those over time. They use an AVM to do that.
Sure. Of course, the problem there is that you've got to know that address of that property.
That's absolutely true.
And there people are struggling with that. They want increased visibility into the underlying portfolio, but at the same time, that brings up privacy issues, and so they're struggling with that.
Well, we have just a moment left. We've seen prices on AVMs. They used to be much higher than they are today. They've come way down. They've become essentially commoditized. Do you see much difference in the performance? And when I say performance, we're talking about two things. We're talking about, does the AVM hit? That basically means, can it find the address?
Right.
And secondly, how good is the value estimate? How have you seen that trend over time?
Well, it's improved on the better AVMs, but you would think that by this time in the marketplace, all the AVMs would be performing approximately the same.
They're not.
They're not. There's a huge difference. And we test AVMs for some of our lenders, and you see, first of all, we see hit rates ranging from about 50% up to about 87%.
And the hit rate means?
Means two things. One, you can find the address, and two, there's sufficient data to run the model.
Okay.
All right. And then the second piece is the accuracy, and the accuracy is all over the place. You know, it's really pretty remarkable that there's that much variation.
So give us some range.
Well, you know, within 10%, which everybody would like to see the value come in within 10%, and they would like to see 90 or 100% within 10%. But the truth is, it's typically around, I don't know, 50% that are within 10%. That's the very best models.
Right.
And then it, you know, there's a significant portion that's more than 20% off, even more than 30% off.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Well, we're out of time. We'll continue our discussion on AVMs next week. This is FNC's Morning View. I'm Bill Rayburn with Bob Dorsey. You all have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.